You've spent 6 years at Google, and I spent over 4 years at Meta. It's there's so many benefits of being in that particular position. So maybe I'll start, and then
Totally.
I want to hear your take.
Yeah, let's do it.
I loved, the scale of the problems. I
Yes.
loved the people were fantastic, some of the best minds in the world. Um, I just love solving all of these, working on these very important problems and doing research to production, really having a front row seat to the latest advancements in the industry. And I think that's a very enviable place and a privilege. Uh, but on the other hand, there's also a whole set of frustrations. So let's spill the tea.
Yeah, I mean, go pro and con. I'll do the same. I think that's
Yeah,
funny.
I mean,
Yeah,
con is, it moves obviously slower than it should. There
totally.
is multiple alignments to go through. So
Oh God, alignment.
anytime you work in a big company, you have to align with multiple people, multiple groups, multiple VPs. You have to get all sort of stakeholder alignment. Another one I will touch on is really, you know, let's this is a big one. Incentives for
Mm,
employees.
yeah,
So the things that get you a good performance reviews may not always be the best thing for the business.
totally.
I think that one is, yeah, that is a very challenging one because, like if I was Zuck or something, it's also very difficult to set up a system that rewards people properly as well. And I
Yeah,
don't know of anyone that's done it perfectly.
yeah.
So yeah, it's an amazing journey.
Say like there are pros and cons. I think the answer is going to be very different that I'm giving today than what I would have given even like a year and a half or 2 years ago. Which is to say, like these big companies are tanker ships, right? Like the ship analogy is the one that works the best for me. It's like it's a big ass ship, and us as PMs and TLMs and all design leads, we're like sort of like the tugboats that are trying to steer this like massive ship in a certain direction, and it's tough. You get a lot of gray hair. I certainly have a lot more gray hair than I did, going into Google, and like it's satisfying too when you get those things done and you actually launch it. You do so at a scale that is uncomparable. And I think it's scale in terms of like the reach of deployment, like working on billion user products, which is the cliche thing. But I think also what's interesting is the novel data sets you get to work with. And like maybe that answer is different for me since I worked on geospatial and 3D maps. Like, people, there's this debate happening with the LLM world right now, right? It's like, how valuable are proprietary data sets? Like, if you just scrape the public internet, is that enough? And then if that is enough, like, where's the moats, right? And maybe you complement that with like some really good reinforcement learning from human feedback, or maybe some licensed data sets that you get here based on your domain. But I think in a place like mapping, right? Like, there is no other company, maybe there are a handful of companies in the private sector and maybe some public sector entities that could run a mapping operation that involves high resolution satellite imagery, like literally being able to go to an engineer and be like, yo, like, can we task a satellite? And an engineer's writing a CL to move satellites in orbit. Like that was like 2019, I was having like nerd extravaganza to just think that's possible, to like, oh, we want to do this thing in London. Can we fly a fleet of planes with these insane camera sensors on them and go capture that city, down to street view cars with 150 megapixel sensors and like frickin' LiDAR to go do these like multi-lane collects and sidewalk collects to create this like next generation digital twin. So like the fact that I got to work on that, I think is like a privilege of a lifetime. To your point, the people, oh my God, like even in the AR days, like, oh, this person did like basically wrote the thing on photogrammetry and like lighting estimation. You get to work with that person. Oh my God, like this person wrote the book on computer vision that everyone reads. And like that person's hitting me up for advice. It's like, oh, holy crap, what's going on? Like that, I had a lot of these like sort of like fanboy-ish moments where I'd like these luminaries I'd looked up to, and then I got to work with them and like ship stuff with them and become friends with many of them and mentors with others. That was like a wild experience. I don't think you can experience that anywhere else other than like these large companies that like attract the best talent and have the world's most challenging problems to tackle. So while some people may say, hey, like startups do all the innovative stuff, well, like tell me a startup that's mapping the world in 3D and doing it at any semblance of scale,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
so
Tell me a startup that has 2.9 billion users and you sneeze, you hit millions of people.
yeah, and
No, good luck with that.
that also has its downside, which goes
Oh
to your
yeah.
incentive
Oh
point,
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
which is like there is this culture, and I saw this more on the consumer side than the platform side, because platform teams are far more incentivized to build novel capabilities and just drive adoption inside and outside. First party or third party, as it said, or second party, which is like a hilarious creation of tech companies, is the fact that there are billions of users also creates this incentive structure where people do very incremental consumer facing launches and they sort of like rotate their feature on a
Yep.
high impression surface.
Yep.
And that's like, I don't know if that's the right thing for the company, you know? And so like, it's kind of, you know, it's always hindsight's always like, you know, things look perfect in retrospect. But I mean, there's a lot of products like I pushed on and pitched that everyone told me I was stupid to do because they were 0 to 1. Everyone was like, no, 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 just like don't change teams or keep doing your thing and like blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, again, like I just followed passion and I think that tended to work out. But I also think like there's so many people that miss out on being an entrepreneur at these large companies. They go in and they follow
yeah.
the frickin' cookbook is like, well, here's what the ladder says to get to staff or senior staff or director, whatever, right? Like, and here's what I'm going to start doing to do that. And like people forget that like their ultimate strength is whatever unique lens they have on the world, kind of to go like, you know, some of the things we were talking about earlier and leaning into that. Cause like the next step will be far more clear to you, you know, especially when, you know, things go wrong or, you know, stuff happens versus if you're following some playbook and you're like, whoa, oh crap. Like, what do I do now? It's like,